Agus fáiltim go mór ribh mille seo agus tasúlam go dteach sé trí chéan éireachtais gan mhail. I think it would be very appropriate if there wasn't any inordinate delay in putting this bill through, because it is all about delay. And I have to say that in recent years, more and more delay seems to be endemic in every system. And even in the remedies to deal with delay, there can be delays. And I've had a number of cases with the Ombudsman recently, and that takes a lot longer than it did initially when the Ombudsman was set up. And you can go to the Ombudsman and say you want to complain about a delay, but that in itself takes time. So I think we need to deal with delay both in the administrative system and also in the judicial or legal system. And I welcome the bill, but I hope it will have the results that it's intended to have. Now, I think the first thing in dealing with this issue of delay is to look at why it's happening and then to deal with it. And in reality, people shouldn't have to go to an assessor and take effectively action against the state for delay. But unfortunately, in too many cases, you wish you could do it every day of the week with so many parts of the state, including, if I might say so, the Department of Justice, who I find can be very slow dealing with issues. But when it comes to the courts, it becomes even more important. Maybe it's a family law case where somebody needs urgent action and they don't get that action because of delays in the court. They can't get into the court or other delays. Maybe there's delay, and you see this in times where there are years to resolve family law cases. Then we obviously have the case of civil cases. Issues such as planning come to mind readily, where the system seems to be open to being abused by people taking court cases, knowing that there's a big queue and that there'll be a delay in the case being heard, and that if they oppose something, that is a way of stalling the process. And then we get to criminal cases. And I think there's a very important element in all these cases, particularly we say the family law cases, where somebody might be seeking protection, might be looking to move forward with their life. And similarly with criminal cases, where people are spending time on remand, maybe, or on strict bail terms, which does interrupt your life. And it is important, I don't care what you might guess, only a court can convict you. And I think it's very, very important that we never take that right away. And as one guard that said to me one night, we had a community meeting about criminal cases, and he said, and I think it was very wise, he said, I'd rather 3 guilty people get free rather than 1 innocent person be wrongly convicted. And I think we've seen here and in other jurisdictions the effect of presuming guilt before you go through all the processes in the court. Minister, I understand that in a previous bill that I didn't get an opportunity to speak on, that we provided extra judges, but that was done on a phased basis so that there would be an assessment carried out of the effect of it. This needs to be very robust, because I've seen time and again over many years where we add more staff to the system, more resources, but within a year or two, the delays are as big as ever. I think we have to make sure that when we put in the resources, when we put in the mechanisms, that we get delivery. I also believe it's important that this assessor, or the number of people who have to go to the assessor, will be the exception rather than the rule. There may be a few sharp slaps on the wrist for the system would wake it up that it's not something that's acceptable anymore, and that would not be a common process, and that we're not going to find that nearly everybody has to go to the assessor, and that is costing the state a lot of money in both the administration and paying out compensation, because everyone just accepts and it's not their money that they're paying out. Can I say here, finally, that if we look at another jurisdiction on this island, of course, we have an even more acute problem, and a problem that I have highlighted time and again, and that I'm very surprised hasn't been highlighted more by other politicians. And that is that in criminal cases, it can take up to 8 years or more to get a trial. 8 years or more to get a trial. 3 years on remand is not out of the question. And even if let out of bail, and there's no certainty of that, the bail conditions are incredibly, and I haven't time here to list them all out, are incredibly punitive. And one of the problems is they're so punitive that they really restrict your life. You can only have, for example, in one case I know of where there was only 10 numbers allowed in the mobile phone and they had to be approved by the court, etc., etc. Reporting day and night, tagging and so on, year after year. That's not freedom. And again, to my knowledge, there's no statutory way of ensuring that that is taken into account if there is a guilty verdict in the end. That is very wrong. It's happening in our island. My belief is that all criminal trials should be brought to justice rapidly, and I would expect that that should be doable within a year and a half to 2 years. I believe that they do it a lot faster down here. I think it's something we have a duty to our citizens who live north of the border. If it was in any other country across the world, we would be hopping up and down, saying about the terrible injustice to Irish citizens that they're waiting for trials for 8 years. It's happening within our island, and it's time that we dealt with that issue.